Я дуже рада всіх вітати на сьогоднішній події в рамках нашої публічної програми Харківської школи архітектури. І ми неймовірно щасливі, бо сьогодні в рамках нашої публічної програми відбудеться лекція від дуже-дуже давнього друга школи, направду, і викладача також школи Фулько Трефферса, який представить дослідження «Інтегроване бачення річки Дніпро». І буде говорити в своїй лекції про те, наскільки важливою є річка Дніпро для України. І це інтегроване бачення, воно оформлено також в книжці. Сьогодні ця книжка буде презентована і у вас буде можливість її погортати, зокрема. Варто сказати, що такі дослідження робляться завжди дуже тривалий час. І вони включають в себе величезну кількість дуже різних шарів для того, щоб такі дослідження були комплексними, такі дослідження могли показувати проблему або феномен, або предмет дослідження з дуже різних кутів і під різними фокусами, з різними фокусами. Отже, сьогодні ми зможемо з вами послухати про це і зможемо поставити питання. Фулько Трефферс є нідерландським архітектором, він є співзасновником Ro3kvit, урбан коаліції Ro3kvit, а також директором студії 12 Matters. Лекція буде відбуватися англійською, тому зараз я на неї переключуся. Що ж, Фулько, we are very happy that you're here, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we'll be not in Ukrainian today, not next week, not next year, but I'll have slides in English and Ukrainian both. This is the result of 1 year work of our team, Ro3kvit and Greenpeace together. This is a book which I try to explain in about 45 minutes, 1 hour, what is in there and what is the purpose of this book. It's also available as a download for free at our website, ro3kvit.com, so everybody can just find all the information as like a small encyclopedia about this river on the website. Why Dnipro River? The question that we always ask ourselves, why are we doing what we are doing? It was, I think, 1.5 years ago that the topic of the Dnipro River became part of my conversations in Ukraine more and more often. People were talking about it as a memory, people were talking about it as part of the system that was there in industries or in ecology, and it was in a way too big for everybody to comprehend. And it started interesting me even more when people were telling me how this river actually changed in the last 60 years. And we were very lucky that at the moment that we were thinking about this river, can we make a project out of that? Can we think of how we can study this without knowing what could be the client, without knowing what could be the result? Then we found the collaboration with Greenpeace, because Greenpeace reached out to us. We want to do more with Ukraine and upscaling our ideas on sustainability, and maybe Ro3kvit could be an interesting partner for us. They've done a small project about solar panels on a hospital, and they found out that when they started doing that, by placing those solar panels, it became also a social hub for the small village Horenka, north of Kiev, because there was electricity continuously, and there was where the people could reload their phones, and they started talking to each other. So the hospital got a different meaning just by a simple thing, and as bringing solar panels. And this was kind of what we were thinking of as well, but then on a totally different scale, the scale of the whole Dnipro River. How do all those elements of energy, water, industry, how do they interact? And we wanted to know more. And we just started. We just started to see if we could find the unused potential of this river. Because everybody was saying, the more we started talking about it, this is the essence of Ukraine. Ukraine in a way. It's many things of the essence, of course, but here we have this one river that is so much connecting us as a country. It's our past, it's our future, it's the life, it's the threat as well. And we want to show that unused potential and how we can use it better. We don't have all the solutions here, but hopefully we can use it better. And we did it with this team. 6 people from Ro3kvit, 2 people from Greenpeace. They came together pretty much every week, every 2 weeks. And there was, of course, a small support team around us, but we were not that big, but we tried to do our best to find this. And wow, I think it is at least interesting to see how your response will be at the end of this presentation, what we found, and hear your feedback on that. Interesting also that we're here in Lviv in the Kharkiv School of Architecture, and Kharkiv School of Architecture was one of the partners, because during this year we also had a workshop with students here in Lviv, students in Warsaw, doing together like a 2 weeks workshop about this river, about the city of Dnipro as well, about the neighborhood, and we were collaborating together, Ro3kvit and Kharkiv School, about how to find interesting topics, how to approach this also from a student point of view. And well, this is the result, or one of the results, in the presentation in Kiev 3 weeks ago. The general context about this river. A river is not only a river. It starts in Russia. Dnipro starts in Russia. It flows through Belarus and then enters Ukraine. That's already, most of you will probably know it, but a river has no borders in that way, or is a border itself, but it's already the first threat or the first connection that can be made. And the river is not only connecting countries and with all its complexity in that, but it's also a whole basin, as we call it. We are mainly focusing in this book on the river itself, but the whole basin, all the little streams, as if it's like, I don't know the English word, all the small streams of your veins, the veins of your body go flowing towards this one river. And you see almost 2/3 of the population of Ukraine is depending on the water of the Dnipro River. Lviv is not, just a small notch. But you see how important this basin is. This is the white, big element. And the river is connecting or cutting 3, 4, 5 different natural elements. From the, what we call the Polysia, the forest steppe, the steppe arid, and then the steppe semi-arid. I didn't know these words either, to be honest, but this is also quite unique that one river is flowing to those different natural zones. And the Dnipro has been quite interestingly part of many of the most important Eastern European maps as well. So from a historical point of view, we saw this Dnipro always. We saw it here on the left, where it really was the middle of the country. It placed it like a direct line because it's so big that you don't really see the bending. But this is how they tried to get a grip on the land and the land use. Or they placed it horizontally. It didn't matter north or south. That was at that moment not that important. But you could see it in all those historical maps. And the river looked like this. It was actually a place where there were many cascades, there were many rocks, there were many waterfalls in the river itself. And it was also part of, here it's a French word, so it was also part of the pride of this country. You would send postcards of the Dnipro River to your family in somewhere, even postcards that were written in French. Until a couple of years after the Second World War, then the idea of a river that could be more than just this natural stream and a place where you could sail or swim, and it became part of the industrialization in a It became part of the energy system. It became part of the places where the industries would really go. This was not unique for Soviet Union or not unique for Ukraine. It's happened all around the world. So in France, in Germany, in Norway, in the United States, in China, they have all those changes of the natural flows of the water. And they started rebuilding that and rethinking what can be of extra use of this river. Actually quite interesting, very, very technical and very, very man-made. So mankind took over the essence of the river itself. And then they said, it's not a river anymore. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I should have known by now, 6 different lakes that are connected, but it's not a river anymore. And you can even see that this lake, yeah, well, here it's very small. We come back to that later in Kremenchuk. Here it's really big. It's almost like a small sea that is functioning as a reservoir that can be used for different other means than just being water for fish, for boats, etc. And these lakes, of course, they occupied a lot of land, a lot of zones in the country where it was not just nothing, there was something before that. And a lot of villages, so this is one of those villages that had just been overflown by the water and constructed by construction of new dams and walls. You can see how the original black line, how that's changed into the lakes. Here, this is the Kamyansky Lake, I think. And you see that all those small settlements, villages, are the red dots, and they just disappeared in time. In a short time, actually. All those people were forced to move out to really look at the improvement of the energy system, improvement of the water system that was needed for other means than for those villages itself. And here you can see even wider range. So this is again this Kremenchuk area. The Kremenchuk city is right at the bottom. And this area you can see how many of those red dots actually just disappeared. And I don't even know exactly, we couldn't find it, how many people used to live there, were forced to move out. It could be interesting to still find it somehow. But we also know that Soviet Union and archives is not a very good combination. So we couldn't find everything there yet. Second thing, what was found during our research period, where we still didn't know what to do with it, but we were just looking what is interesting, that these dams also became a threat, because in the very beginning we started like 1 month or 2 months only. There was this bombing of the Kakhovka dam. Not only this one, there were also other dams that were bombed, but this one was the biggest, and this was the biggest collapse. The whole world knew about it the same day, and it's a big tragedy, catastrophe as well. So suddenly the river became a target, a military target for, in this case, Russia, and that could damage a large part of the country. I'll get back to that later. But so the river is not innocent anymore in a way. Because of the man-made changes, also those changes can be disrupted again, and therefore these big lakes, they can be a huge threat for the whole area around it, because many places flooded, many houses disappeared, many people were killed, animals were killed because of this bomb. Oh, it's actually here. So here you see Kherson, how it was flooded in those first days, and it looks almost peaceful, but it was not a lot of power, how this water entered the city, and how all the Dutches disappeared, how part of the big houses also disappeared just by the power of the flooding water. And here we made a map of how all the different missiles and how all the different attacks in the last thing, in the first 1.5 years of the full-scale war, where they were hit, and you can see also how that really is part of this river and this river basin. So, I don't know if this works. Let's see, now I'm going to make another red dot. all those red dots in the south, they actually followed the line of this river because they were attacked from this part, and Kherson area was really, really hit. And you cannot imagine how much pollution and how many grenades and how many bombs and what is in this water. You cannot imagine the same here around Kiev area, how much the groundwater is polluted. So we cannot deny anymore that the water and the war, the river and the war have a lot to do with each other, and we have to find solutions for that. And actually, it's not only the pollution, it's not only the bombing, but it's the front line itself. So the river also divides. There's even people will think, well, let at least everything west of the Dnipro River stay part of Ukraine. I don't believe in that kind of negotiation at that moment, and especially not in this case. But this is a picture of 1941, where you can see that for a long time the Russian and the German army were also fighting along this river line. So the same happened now here in the south, because for those of you who don't know, so the front line is kind of here, so it goes along the southern part of the river, and then near Zaporizhzhia it takes a different route. But you still can see literally in the south part, the river is the border between occupied and free territory. And like I said, this was not the first time that this line was here as well. More neutral use. What is the water for? What do we use the water for? If there's no war, if there's and not looking back at history, how it is now, or how it was in 2021 to be better, 59% of the water usage in Ukraine is provided by the Dnipro River. So there is 60% is going to the households, residential use, like bath, kitchen, those kind of stuff. There is 38% is being used for agriculture, so that's really quite a large element, and 44% is industry. And you could also call the agriculture an industry in itself. 44% for industry is mainly for cooling elements and for cleaning parts of it. So this is, and unfortunately, agriculture and industry pollute water a lot. They take more than they give. It's definitely not neutral. So unfortunately, they use, together 80-something% of the water, and they bring back the same amount of water into the river or into the ground, but not in the same quality. So it really is a big issue. For the households, it's a little bit better, but you can see here, this is one of the biggest cleaning stations in Ukraine, or maybe the biggest in Kiev. And here the water becomes clean quite well, but still not able to drink it in the city because of the piping system, which is not new enough. So because of the old pipes, because of the breaks in the pipes, it's still not safe enough. But at least this part is, in residential areas, there is a better balance, you could say. In industries and agriculture, unfortunately not. And all the agreements and all the filters that are promised and agreed, they are still, let's say, on the way to really happen. So that is what the water itself is used for, and we try to look at all the different layers, as we call them. In urban planning, we call the different elements, the different topics, how water is used, how the river is used. We call them layers, layers of the city, layers of the land, layers of the region. And we tried to look at all those different layers, and there's many smaller ones more, but these are the main ones. And I'll just go in my presentation through these topics to give a short hint about what it's about, and maybe how we could improve the situation a little bit in the future. More details in the 500-page book, to be short. So first of all, of course, where do you use this for? A long time ago, it was used a lot for transport of people. And people are the older people are very proud of this picture. It was like a fleet of boats that would go from Kiev to Dnipro to even the sea, to the Black Sea.
And this was like a bus, the water bus, or water taxi, whatever you call it. And this was also a postcard, as you can see, so this was really something that people were proud of, and it was funny, and it was nice to do, and it was a kind of adventure. It was not used as from day to daily work or something, from home to work. It was more used for between different cities. It took some time, and you went to visit family or go to some weekend house or something. And not only people, but also cargo was used much more than it was lately. And not as Danube, not as the Rhine, but quite important still. Sorry, it's not here. There is this problem, of course, that when this cargo wants to travel fast from north to the south of the country, that it has to go through all those cascades. So you have easy pathway over the lakes, these reservoirs, and then you just jump like 100 meters or something like that, and those lots of force cannot just jump that. So you have the shus, it's I think the Ukrainian word, I don't know the English one, so the elevator, the water elevator, I don't know, and it goes there. And that takes a lot of time because there's not a lot of capacity for that. There can be one or two of those cargo boats in each of those, and then therefore the cargo transport is not that profitable yet. It could be more, and it is okay, but it's not really fluid. It also has to do directly with these reservoirs. So in a way, the north-south area, the north-south line, it goes. It's about the water transport, but as many people say, there's also a difference between west and east. It's blocking. The river is blocking the eastern from the western part. Actually, our study doesn't really match that. There's quite some bridges, not a lot, but here you can see them all. Bridges for cars and for trains. And well, here you see them, and of course in the south, where those two ones are destroyed, everything else is still there. It is good enough to just connect the eastern and the western part. And we did some studies on 3 different places. What if you add more bridges to it? How would the flow of mobility of cars or trains, would it really improve a lot? Would the speed be faster? Would there be many more opportunities to go from eastern to the western part? Or the opposite, and actually it didn't really matter that much. So there's this study that we did together with the organization called Space Syntax, and there we could see that only around Kyiv it would make it a little easier to have 1 or 2 extra bridges, but everything else, the large part of the eastern part of the country, didn't really matter if there would have been a few more bridges. So it's not literally, it is blocking, of course, the east from west. There's moments where you have to drive a little bit around, but it doesn't really, on a larger scale, doesn't really block economic potential, doesn't really block the really cultural potential there as well. Another way how to look at the river is to look at it as an ecological system. Actually, the most original one, before man came in. Ecological system, what do we have? There are already 2 biosphere reserves, 2 natural reserves, and a national natural park, and 11 regional landscape parks. They're all quite young. This whole system of natural reserves, it kind of started in 1991 with the new law about ecology, and then step by step, some of those parks started to be named, mentioned, maintained, organized. This is not a long history here, but it is quite okay. And actually, this whole Dnipro River is almost entirely included in the Emerald Network. And the Emerald Network is this green-blue network, as we call it, this ecological network in the country. Actually, even wider than the country only. There are absolutely more unique animal species than we expected. We calculated them all. People are calculating them literally every year. There's a large group of Ukrainians doing that. They do that all around the world. Here as well, groups mentioning, okay, I saw a squirrel here, I've seen this fish here, I've seen this bird here, and actually this number of over 8,000 unique species is higher than the number of the Danube. And the Danube is actually much cleaner, doesn't have those reservoirs. So in a way, we were surprised that these unique figures were there. But still, it could be improved some more, because there are some gaps where we see around here, around Cambridge, and now of course in the south, where we don't know what the future will be, we see some gaps that are still blocking these networks. Especially, and I didn't even mention, especially also around Dnipro. Dnipro city, as a city, is really blocking a lot of natural ecological potential of this area. So we have this huge structure in the country, but you can imagine that it is blocked in quite a few areas where animals cannot cross the cities, where animals cannot really flow from one area to the other, and where somehow the extra flow of biodiversity and natural networks doesn't work. But the end, and probably also the past, so the beginning, would be that this whole line, the whole river, could really be one system for these natural elements, the plants and the animals. And that even the northern area, where there's a lot of forest and the border with Belarus, Russia, is really green and eco-friendly, actually, that we could connect that whole zone with the Black Sea zone and the Azov Sea zone and Crimea. So that is one of our hopes, that we could organize legal changes to make that happen, and to make these cities being forced to undertake some action to have those small but just too big disconnections to have them disappear. What else? Fishing. This is more hobby fishing. The first time I saw it in Cherkasy was, I didn't know what I saw. I cannot imagine this ever could be my hobby. You freeze to death, but anyway, this is what people do. But it's also, it used to be quite an industry, not anymore. The fishery in the Dnipro River kind of collapsed, and especially now, of course, with the martial law, it's not there anymore. Could be something as a future element to look at again. Of course, taking care of the ecological power as well, but then some fishery can be done if you organize it in a structured way. And what many people would love to do, to have the Dnipro River as a source of life in terms of, let's say, recreation, air breathing, feeling just close to nature. It's really something that people already do, but on a very small scale, or smaller than the size of the river actually is. So hopefully this river can also incorporate that much more. And part of that recreation can be natural recreations, like all kinds of swimming, sailing, diving, hiking, whatever, but part of it can be really connected to the cultural elements of this area as well. The flooded areas, the flooded villages, maybe Chortica Island, it has been part of the culture of Ukraine so much. So everything that is about the identity of Ukraine, everything that is about this cultural development of Ukraine here in this river and near the river, there is a huge potential to really grab and connect it to recreation, connect it to some local tourism. It's a difficult word, of course, in times of war, but this is really a potential that it's there. You can just grab it, and maybe you should just connect it. And actually, that was one of the ideas from the Kharkiv school students back then in January, February, to really make a connection, and a bicycle and a road and a pedestrian road that really connects all those small dots, and you can say you can walk the whole thing for 1 year, or you can do it in small parts, or you can go to one oblast and take some moments there, but this Kharkiv school idea was definitely welcomed and became part of our book as well, as one of the possibilities for accessible recreation. It's not only that, it's not only nature, it's not only culture, not only the nice fresh air kind of thing. This river became part of the industry. It's the cooling system of many factories. And it became also the waste bin of many factories. And so how do we deal with that? Not easy. I don't even want to talk about interests, about oligarchs, but from a technical point of view, we see that those areas, those industrial areas are very often very close or really connected to the river that much that they both block a good personal connection, residential connection to the water, but also they pollute it that much, and they are just simply too close and too big. And unfortunately, many of those industries were the source of money, the source of development, but also were ignoring the human part of what living in a city means and what living near a river means. So can we think of something new? And there's actually, this is a Ukrainian-wide topic, I think, for the future. How to renew the industry, and it's extremely hard. I talked with the municipality of Zaporizhzhia about it, with the municipality of Mariupol about it, with Oblast of Luhansk about it. How can you rethink your industrialized zone, your industrialized eastern part? It is, the DNA of that area is industry, and they're really good at that. It's part of what Ukraine is, but how can you do it in a way that doesn't negatively affect other elements of this important country, for example, this river, that much. So here is a picture that you cannot read, but that is about changes of the industry from monofunctions that you have here in the left part to new models where you change the different industry into new cleaner industries or combinations of other economic partners as well. This is a very short study because it was much too complicated to include in the whole book, but the approach that we have to think about it and we have to discuss it, we have to organize that, maybe even from ministry point of view, that was the thing that we wanted to point out. Not new, and it's also not something that the industry itself seems to be afraid of. Of course, they are afraid of losing money, they're afraid of losing jobs, but they also know that with the ending of the war, which hopefully will be there soon, that they will need to make new steps towards the West instead of towards the Eastern context. And with those steps, also the sustainability part, the ecological part, the non-polluted part is really their future as well, and they have to think about it and better to do it together. The other approach in the industry could be just by literally positioning the industry where it is, and when you are changing the kind of industry, or when you're changing maybe the industry in the city by deleting parts of those industrial zones, because they're very often much bigger than they need to be, then you could look at different schedules. So in the left part of the picture you can see how it abstractly normally is. So the gray area is a city and the purple is an industrial zone. Very often directly connected to the river. And there's actually two scenarios. If it really needs the water, sorry, if it really needs the water, why don't you place it? Why don't you place it outside of the city border, still reachable? And when you have to invest in new industries anyway, better do it somewhere where it doesn't block the development of the city and the connection of the citizens with the river. Or the other way could be, put it just outside the gray zone, and you don't need to connect it to the water anyway, which also leads to different optimization for the biodiversity in general. So the first one The bottom one is at least better for the people, residents, and the top one is also better for the people area. I'll get back to that later when we zoom in at one of the cities. Somebody calls farmers in Ukraine industries. These large companies, this agricultural industry. They use the water as well. I showed it before. It's not just a few small, nice farmers with a few cows anymore. This is large industry. It's very big interests with, let's say, extremely rich people as well. And they are using a lot of water. And as you can see, they just use the river as well. Those two panels, one over here and one over here, are literally feeding the machines that are watering the areas. So every circle that you see is a part of land where these big arms are going around and they are watering the land, and this is the maximum that they can get in the most efficient way from the water from the Dnipro. The water, like I said before, it goes back more dirty and quite slow, so it's polluting the ground step by step there as well, unfortunately. There's a lot of chemicals in all those agriculture, so it's not really a healthy system, and it's degrading year by year. But it's an important industry, it's an important part of the economy. We all know that this is really maybe even the future of the economy, part of the future of the economy of Ukraine. So how to deal with that? We simply calculated new technology of other irrigation system. If you use, instead of a system like that, we start using something like that with smaller, more directly parts of water that don't already vanish up in the air before it hits the ground. You can reduce approximately 50% of the water usage. Why is that so important? These reservoirs are so big because of the agriculture mainly. It's mainly because of that why those reservoirs are needed that big. It's not because of the energy that is used by the hydropower stations that much. It's more about the agriculture, why they're that big. And so that's why we now see that if the reservoir of the Kachovka Dam would be half the size, there would have been a lot less damage. All those things, they are somehow connected, and we would hope that the government can convince by whatever means, maybe by laws, maybe by something else, that they can convince the farmers and the agricultural industry to reduce the amount of water that's used, and also to filter the water that comes back and use different kind of chemicals or not at all anymore. So in agriculture sphere, there's a lot of improvements that need and can be made in favor of the quality of the river, and therefore in use of other deeds. I think this is the last one, not sure, and this is about energy. I already mentioned there's these reservoirs. It's used for the agriculture and it's used for the industries and for the households. But here you can see that the river is also very much used for energy. How is that? So it's centralized energy. So there's a few stations that are placed around the river and therefore around the country, and that stations are used for the peak energy, as they call it, so the highest part of energy that sometimes is needed during the day or in parts of the year. So those reservoirs are just silent there. Those hydropower stations don't do that much because the nuclear power is or the coal industry is taking care of the general energy consumption. But at a certain moment, when it's very warm or when it's very cold, or a certain peak hours in some of the days, there's extra electricity needed, and then they just open up the gate of these reservoirs. Water falls down 50 to 100 meters, and then that leads to more energy for those moments. So it's actually quite interesting. It's clean. and you can control it. So in a way, 60, 70 years ago, it makes sense. It would help. But it's not that much used, but it's used. So it's also not something that we can just ignore, we can just change that much. But we've been studying, and of course, especially also Greenpeace was very much looking into this part and looking into the renewal of concepts of energy to change the idea of nuclear power, not exactly now, but in the future, to see how this could be designed in another way, that we still can use the electricity that we need or think we need, but not with the negative side effects. So it's now very much centralized. The attacks are a big risk, so it's also a target, it's a military target, as we said before. Interesting enough, climate change leads to decentralized systems of energy as well. So we found this interesting similarity between what is needed for climate change issues and how you can look at the energy system, and what is needed for military risks and what is needed for energy. In both cases, it's interesting to organize a grid system instead of a top-down system. Let me try to explain. There's no sheet of that, so if you have one power station that serves the whole city, if you attack that power station or cut the line just after the power station, the whole city will be dark. If you have 5 of them and you put them in some kind of grid, that all the households are part of that grid, or all the businesses are part of that grid, if one of them is targeted, or even 2, the grid can take over. They support each other, like literally how the World Wide Web also works. So it is not one system, there's a grid system, and you have different places. So you have to attack it more times, you have to protect it in different ways. It can be smaller as well, and together you help each other out. The same counts for renewable energy. When you want to change the energy system into energy concepts that are climate friendly, you think about wind, you think about solar, maybe about water. There's not one system that can handle it all. So you need different systems that can support each other. And what they usually do is that they organize this grid around it. They have the wind turbines, they have the solar panels, and maybe have some water, maybe have something else, and together they organize that it will be stabilized enough, and it will be enough security of feeding enough electricity to those places where it's needed. So that combination was quite interesting. That both for military and for climate change, the same end result could be found. And interesting from our point of view could be that this Dnipro River could also lead to, on a big scale, to a change in let's say, green transition for Ukraine, using this energy as an example on this scale. Because this is how the numbers now look like. This is, of course, a number that Greenpeace was very much negative about. They were realistic. They really understand why nuclear power at this moment is also saving a lot of lives in Ukraine. But there's, by them and also by many scientists, we know the negative effects, and we know it, of course, also here in the country especially. But nuclear power, coal, gas, and then only a small part of hydropower, and you see what a large change still needs to be done to make the energy greener. This is not something both Greenpeace or Ro3kvit are thinking that it is highest priority to start right now, but it is like an approach, a mentality, and it's also a system that can be built up step by step to change it from these centralized systems that leads to this schedule or this table that can lead to a decentralized system that you can start slowly to change the numbers and to make it more sustainable and climate friendly. we started calculating this on one neighborhood in Kremenchuk city. We started calculating literally what if we have different scenarios for these housing blocks and a hospital and a school and another school, and what if we isolate them, and what if we use solar panels on top of them? Just a very simple exercise. So what could that lead to? And the savings, even in the most basic scenario, that we don't do everything perfect level, but just a basic scenario of isolating and some solar panel, would already go of 58% savings in energy, and 82 if you do it a little bit more advanced, but still doable. With a payback time, I think, I do it behind now, I think payback time of 8 or 10 years of the investments that you will need to take. But in this case, when you look at it like this, already you can have 1/3 of the total energy production locally organized. And we even started, but we didn't make it part of the book or presentation, we started dreaming, okay, what if we do all houses or only all hospitals or something in the whole river basin area? It would really reduce a lot of the centralized systems not needed anymore. So here, this simple solution with the Ukrainian climate at this moment could already be organized quite easily. Basic investments, not cheap. There's a lot of extra investments needed anyway for Ukraine, but this could really save both Ukraine and the river a lot. So we said the highest energy intensity of the country is around this area. So that's why we think river basin and energy are connected, and it's already happening on a small scale. The potential is there, and in our vision, in our dreams, the victory and the climate change go hand in hand. This is all on a very large scale. Very extremely large scale in terms of investment, in terms of strategies, and we need loads of stakeholders to talk to, what we're going to do as well in the next couple of months. But we zoomed in, what can a city do? What can you do on a small local level? And we chose the city of Kremenchuk. What if the city of Kremenchuk would take the initiative to take the lead in this? And they were actually very happy that we chose them, because first of all, they had quite a good ecological department that really wanted to collaborate with them, but also they gave us a lot of information that kind of surprised us about the history of the city. Kremenchuk, for those of you who don't know, it's here, so it's just after the biggest lake, and it's a huge lake, it's a huge element of this river, but it's a kind of a small city. I think it's 100-something thousand people. I should have known. Have to check. Nobody ever goes there. How many people ever been in Kremenchuk?
I live here 17 years.
Ah, it's 3 of you. Wow, this is amazing. Normally it's 0. Amazing.
I'm also from Kremenchuk.
Wow. Okay, you want to say the next slides then? Well, I was there a year ago for the first time, and it's amazing. It's really a beautiful, small city with everything the city needs to be a city life, but it's also very much connected to the river and the nature as well. It's what the colleague that went with me said, this is the most chill city I've been in Ukraine until now. The chill city became the sub-slogan of Kremenchuk. So you can see here the large lake. In the screen is not that well to be seen, the gray area, which is the city, industries around it, and here nature on different sides that we have. It's not that easy to see it on this screen, unfortunately. But it's a city that, when you look at it closer, where you can see that a lot of the areas are accessible directly from the city to the river. So the city center is here, and there's a beach here, and there's not like Kiev, not like Dnipro, not a big highway walking there. No, you can just walk there, go there by bicycle, by wheelchair. You're from Kiev, you know what it means, right? You should visit Kremenchuk, right?
But I remember that there are like 6 lanes alongside Dnipro or something like.
No, there's a bridge. Well, you can tell better.
Parallel to the river after this.
No, a little bit further, but that's here, I think.
Okay.
But so here, this is the city center. You can just go there. It's really relaxed. This is the beach where you then enter. There's loads of people. It's not the only beach. This was the wrong picture because later we went there when we launched it in July. We swam there as well. It was burning hot, but it was really, really friendly city. And only this area was the only area which was a little bit blocked or used by the harbor. But everything else in the city is really nice. You cross it. What was the name of this island? It was Dream Island or something, right? Yeah. So it really has all those elements in it that you just want to grow up there, I would say. Why did you leave? Why did you leave? No, I would never do it. But what was also interesting, I'll get back to that later. We were suggesting to the city of Kremenchuk to use that quality much more. So to use the fact that you can connect all those different areas much more. Now it's a little bit hidden. You have to find your own way. It's not connected to the neighboring villages or even cities. So we suggested to make some kind of pathways, to make some kind of recreational routes. To even now, it can just be done. It's not a lot of work. It's not a lot of time, not a lot of money to already include different elements which are like points of interest, all those small bulbs, the points of interest that can be connected and where you can just hang out or you can fish or you can swim or you can whatever you can do. You can be read a book, read about the history, whatever. And there's a few elements where you probably would need to improve a little bit, where some small changes have been made that can easily be made, and where we circle around and we said, okay, to the municipality, if you want to study this river connection better, also on a smaller scale, not on this larger scale of the region, then those elements can be crucial for developing the relationship between the city and the river as well. So it's here next to the beach. There's an area where used to be the port, and it became like a kind of place of asphalt, which is not a port anymore. That can be really like a crucial point of interesting investments or natural developments. And in the southern part, there is also like where the bridge crosses the river, there's also an area where you can improve the city a lot. We didn't study that too deep. We're going to study it with them probably from December onwards for another 6 months. And here they are thinking about, puzzled about the industry here as well. No concrete solutions yet, but as you can see, the industry was already quite far out of the city center. And that is because Kremenchuk was 60% damaged during the Second World War. And that nobody knew, or at least we didn't know. There's hardly anything to find about it. But 2 things were interesting. The industry, because of that, changed its position after the Second World War. Before it was more close to the city center, and then they made the decision to reallocate it on a different place. Exactly what we now discussed with all those previous diagrams. So many people in Ukraine are looking for examples to Rotterdam, to Gdansk, so it's here. Kremenchuk is already an interesting example to learn from, except for the fact that the archives are really difficult to get to find. Really, more information is difficult to find. There's another interesting example of one of the squares in the city center. Actually, it was one of the first participation meetings in Ukraine, I would say, maybe even in the world, about urban planning, because right after the Second World War, they needed to decide, okay, what are we going to do with this housing block that has been totally bombed and erased from the world? And the citizens actually decided together, maybe we shouldn't rebuild it. Maybe we should keep that place empty, make it a park, and make the connection with the river better. And that's what the historians from Kremenchuk told us. So actually we were saying, okay, all those advices that we're giving in this book, they were already done in Kremenchuk, so just go there and you see what it is. But absolutely fascinating place, and we hope to zoom into that soon as well. How do we do that? A little bit of theory about our integrated urban planning, integrated urban design approach. We have different kind of diagrams for this. We call it layers, or we call it different angles. Here you say the different topics: economy, energy, safety. You see them entering the city perspective. That's how we actually look. So we come up with a bunch of advices in words or in maps on those different topics. We give them a priority here, and then we place them on a map and see where there's a conflict or where we can make extra added value towards each other. Like this example that I just gave about energy and safety, then suddenly it builds up to something stronger. Sometimes there's a conflict and you need to think how to get from the individual layer or the individual perspective to a combined element over there. So that's the way how we mostly try to look at the urban planning, including those topics of energy and safety. Second. We're coming to the final part of the presentation. If we have all those elements, all those layers, all those topics on a bigger scale and on a smaller scale, what could we see as our general principles? We didn't make a master plan for the whole river. We didn't detail everything out. It's impossible. But we wanted to have like the first shift in change of what we learned and what we see as the unused potential, without ignoring all the elements which are also relevant and also good. And we came to, first of all, with 5 principles to be added, to be seen as, if the ministry would approve these 5 principles, then we would be very happy. First of all, it sounds maybe a little bit too obvious, but it's important to say the Dnipro River basin is a source of life in all aspects, not just a few, but in all aspects. So it's a source of life as healthy water for residents, clean water, important word, clean water for flora and fauna, enough water for economic use, not too much, not overflowing, but enough. And it's also a source of life in the symbol of Ukrainian identity and culture. So it's healthy, clean, enough, and a symbol. And at this moment, it's more like it's a source of life for the industry, for the machinery that is built, which is also, understand, for the mankind. Here is much more than that. Principle 2 is topping up that the technical focus as we have it right now must be informed and complemented by natural, cultural, and social viewpoints. We don't want to ignore the technical component. It's there as well, it's relevant as well, it's helpful, but all the other ones are now literally non-existent. When we talk with the water agency, when we talk with different ministries, they all say it's not our mandatory, it's not our mandate, it's not on our list of expertise that we need to have. It's just we look at it from the technical point of view, and that's the only mandate that we have. So they should have this different mandate. They should be responsible. Nobody is responsible for the combination at this moment, and that's just a pity. More than a pity, we'll say. Which is not part of the presentation, but it is part of the book. There is a concept which is called one water approach. It's a little bit like this on a larger scale. One water approach which kind of takes everything together as one concept, which is being developed in the United States and which is also used very often in Europe. This one water approach is like a large methodology that can help the ministry, can help the water agency to go through all the steps of developing a new perspective. And we can imagine this could be very helpful as a tool. It's a large step, it's a large group of steps, but this approach can really make it easier. You don't have to invent the wheel, you have to start from scratch. Energy can be an important part of that, to just see it as a decentralized system. We wanted to place it as a separate principle as well. And the fifth one is participation in dialogue and discussion. This is just the book, this is just a presentation. It's just maybe a start, or it's part of a process that was already going on. Other organizations have been doing it as well. Not in this scale as we know, but yeah, let's start talking about it. Let's start discussing with the industries, with the people who are fishing there, with the people who are responsible for agriculture, with the people who are kind of investing in some kind of new technologies, but whatever kind of networks, organizations, or municipalities, or oblasts, let's start discussing it. Because then we find out all those different elements. And of course, the discussion is also part of the one water approach. But even when that one water approach is not being approved or started by the ministry yet, it's there, of course, this skill, somebody should take the responsibility. Still, the discussion and debate can be already a lot of help. Besides those 5 principles, we've been thinking, okay, how do you look at this main thing of this river which changed 60, 70 years ago, about those reservoirs and those dams and those hydropower stations? A lot of people, a lot of discussions we had about this. What do you see? Do you want to go back to a real river, a natural river? Is it needed? Is it helpful? Would it make sense? Or do you want to somehow just see the situation as it is now and build from there onwards? And actually we were thinking it's not about one solution, although we have, by building those 3 scenarios, we have a preference in Ro3kvit and Greenpeace, but we said let's discuss, so this last point in the principles, let's discuss it as by talking about 3 scenarios. 3 scenarios that can happen, and then everybody can say which scenario is good for them or how to look at it, and it's a way how to discuss it without having one proposal or one system or one new concept, but it's a way how to organize the dialogue. The first scenario is let's look at the river, at the Dnipro, as it was in 2021. Restore the river as it was then. It's the beginning of where we were when life was pretty normal, what we could say. Think about Kachovka Dam, think about some other places that have been damaged, because it's absolutely not the only places. More damage has been done. Try to clean it from the mines, and then just go to the situation as it was back then. Second one is you can also start redesigning the flows in an eco-friendly way. At those places that were damaged, not fully, but those places that were damaged. And the third one is be more radical. If you want to really go to this principle number 2, really want to have nature and culture as a part of this river again, those flooded villages, restore the identity, restore the memory of that. Let's go back to this nature, let's go back 100 years. We placed them in the same diagram again, and we started just to start this discussion. We made a few pros and cons on each of these scenarios. So the positive thing, which is here down there as a plus, the positive thing of back to 2021 would be it's a proven technology. It was there, it worked, it can be done quite fast, it's not hugely expensive, and it brings back water to Crimea, it's liberated, it's this most simple way, I would say. There's also some minuses there. It's dangerous because the mines, it's vulnerable because the ecological system in parts of the river basin has changed a lot. To change it back in a couple of years would really be vulnerable for a lot of the natural elements. And the lifespan of many of the existing systems, the reservoirs, the dams, the hydropower stations, the lifespan is not that long anymore, let's say it like that. So even when there was no war, the maintenance of all those elements and the technology of all those concrete elements, the technology inside the hydropower stations, that is outdated and needs a lot of investments anyway. So why do I want to go back to a system that was outdated? So that was the negative one. The second scenario would be, as we said, redesigning those elements that are that need some decisions anyway, but then do it future-proof. Try to change it into those with those principles in mind. Don't change it with only the technical perspective. So look tailor-made to those elements where you can do something. It can be something that's been damaged. It can also be something where a city wants to improve something. For example, in Dnipro city, you could also look at it. Even when it's not damaged, you can still look at how to make it more human-friendly, eco-friendly, nature-friendly. Those elements can be decided like points on the map. We start here, we start redesigning. Positive is it's quite budget-friendly. You don't have to do everything totally. It's site-specific, step-by-step, and you learn from it. Negative is, can climate change, climate issues, can they wait that long? Because it's not changing maybe fast enough then in terms of energies, maybe not fast enough in terms of biodiversity. So yeah, can it change that? Can it wait that long? What about these peak energies, for example, for the Kachovka Dam? Can we solve them in another way? It could be also quite fragmented. It can be a risk in maintenance, risk in understanding the concept, what is behind it. And the third one is, let's go back to nature, as you said. Nature, 100 years. And of course, this could be interesting for climate, it could be interesting for the ecological biodiversity concept, but actually, the negative part is we really don't know if it's possible. Can you just, how can you, I mean, in those 70, 80, 90 years, a lot of things changed in nature, in climate, in what happened there underneath there in the streams. You cannot expect that the river will take the original flow. So what is the solution here actually? And a lot more research and very unpredictable research need to be done to understand whether this is a really possible solution. It could also be negative for everything connected to transport on water, navigation as we call it, because all those cascades and all those flows, they might be complicated again. It's quite expensive, or maybe very expensive, and for industry and agriculture there are not that clear solutions how they can be either cooled or yeah, if you really go back to original flow, you need to this 50% reduction of water usage in the agriculture is not enough. Then you need more simple systems, more innovative systems, and or the agriculture will have a very negative effect of that as well. So interesting for some perspectives, but quite difficult. Well, as you can hear in my explanation, this is the concept that we think could be the most interesting. The second one, to start looking at those elements that have been damaged, that need to change anyway, and that or that are crucial in changing the perspective of the river as well. But of course, this is what we want to explore more from now on. This was the water at Kachovka Dam. This is what it's now. So you can see the change from how many cubical meters there used to be to here. Everything which is white, it's actually the sand or the underneath. So it's only a small stream, as you can see it here, maybe some small side streams or a small basin. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it's the Integrovane, I guess, extra cooling. People always ask me, so do you think we should rebuild Kachovka Dam because the ministry decided it should be rebuilt? Next to what we just said in the previous slide, I would say it doesn't make that much sense. The water that is needed for agriculture already has alternatives. They built new pipes to other places. They found their way already. So to rebuild this, it's not going to be used that much for agriculture at all. For the industry, all the industry there, whether it's even when Kherson industry collapsed by bombs and by the fact that the economy is really collapsed there. The Energodar, who knows how it will look like when it will be deoccupied again, and if it can be restarted again, and if we should restart it again. The mines in this area are expected to be extremely large amounts. So starting it by cleaning it, by using it as clean water for households, for maybe still agriculture, it will take years. In those years, there are so many alternatives, even for the peak energy, for the energy system. We don't believe that those 5 or 10 years that will be needed to clean it, demine it, and to rebuild them, that it makes any sense to really do it, because by then the alternatives have already been implemented as they have already been done. So with this as an example, how to look at those 3 scenarios, I would say I'd like to end, and maybe I'd like to start the Q&A part, or whatever we call it, and I would really like to thank you a lot.
Thank you so much, Fульko. And yes, you are completely right. We are starting the Q&A round. And using my right of a moderator, I would like to ask the first question, or to give you a first comment, maybe. I do agree with you. Looking at these 3 strategies, the second one seems the most relative and reliable to me, at least. Also in terms of the identity, because you talked about the identity a lot today. And the first and the third scenarios seems to be those ones that kind of erase the memory about the war from the landscape. And I guess that the second one is an opportunity to also somehow try to remember the war through some solutions that can be implemented in the landscape. And keeping that in mind, I also wanted to ask you about the approach that you are proposing when working with the industry. Because in all of your schemes, as far as I understood, you are offering to push the production from the city, either to closer to the river or more far from the river. But in any case, isn't that a good thing to you, or did you consider that production and machinery is also kind of a part of the identity itself, because it was a huge part of the lives of people and still will be, I guess. So is it a good thing to also somehow erase it, also in terms of the connections that will be, the connections will be longer? So did you somehow consider that in mind? Is it a very I don't know, stable solution?
I really think that the industry will be part of the Ukrainian economy and identity, but in a different way. So the economy, I don't believe that Zaporizhzhia economy can stay the way it is. I mean, when you enter the city, you smell the industry. When you look at the numbers of how old people will become in Zaporizhzhia, is lower just because of the air pollution. We cannot ignore that anymore. So any country, and especially a country which is so at this moment trying to understand what is valuable, they will rethink that. So that industry needs to be rethought as well. It can be cleaner, it can be on a different location, it can be a different kind of technology, it can have other filters. There's many solutions for that. And it's not only here, this happens in Germany, this happens in England, this happens in France, and partly happening still in Belgium. They're not that fast in some of the areas. So why not here? So I think that's what it will become on the agenda anyway. So this is a moment, like I showed in Kremenchuk, this is a natural moment to do that. You have to restart it anyway. You have to rebuild your connections with clients anyway. It will not be Russia in the next decades.
those industries were for 78% producing for Russia or other Soviet states. So also from economic perspective, from climate perspective, everything has to be rethought. Let's take the position and the pollution with it, I would say. Let's use that moment. From point of view of identity, yes, we have those examples in Ukraine already, where old industrial buildings or zones have been transformed into areas where the old industry is still, the buildings are still there, some elements in the landscape is still there, and that is also not unique. We see it all around the world, where that is a very interesting, for people, very interesting part of the identity, but used in a different way. It can be used for other kinds of industries, other kind of economy, housing, shops, whatever. We see it, pretty much every industrial city has or is going through that transition. So yes, the identity should be part of it. It's not just erasing, but it's erasing the negative effects of it. Nevertheless, some of those areas are that big in Ukraine that it's an extreme challenge how to do that. The picture I showed about Zaporizhia, where it's like huge area. I think there can be, I mean, or no, I know better of Mariupol, the Azovstal territory of Mariupol. I think the whole city of Mariupol could live in there if you have a general density of, for example, a city like Lviv. Like everybody that used to live there, 400,000 people, could live only on the Azovstal territory with a positive density of the amount of houses or amount of people per square meter. So those areas are so big that it's quite complicated to transform it, but that's the challenge of this huge country and this huge industries. But yeah, I would say let's take that challenge, how to rethink it. And some of it will take some more years, of course.
You already... Thank you, Fульko, for such deep conversation. And you already raised the question about a river as a client. Which kind of institution could be represented such kinds of mass thing as a river, and like if we will be keeping this approach, a very comprehensive approach to look into the river, advocate all these important layers, how it could be, or maybe you know some kind of examples in I don't know, in history there. This kind of advocation of huge, I don't know, some major entity was.
Yeah, who can take the responsibility here? I'm definitely not an expert in this. Could be nice to make that part of the debate in the dialogue in the next couple of months. I expect that an organization similar like the water agency that we have now in Ukraine could take that role. They're already taking quite a large role in that. They should be just forced to not only look at the elements that they're looking right now. They're making a master plan. They have made a master plan of the river last year. But everything in culture, everything in history, everything they just totally couldn't include there. They were not allowed to, they were not interested. Yeah, they were interested as people, but not as an institute. But the water agency is directly linked to the ministry. It's like a separate entity connected to the ministry, and I would say that feels like a logical client. In the meantime, we have also this idea that there was, in the Netherlands, there was an organization and that said, at a certain moment, the sea, the North Sea, should have a voice. Because everybody's using the North Sea as by boat or by fishery or by swimming or by windmill parks. But does the sea actually approve of that? So they were trying to to speak on behalf of the sea. And that was, as a concept, quite interesting, because very often it was just, it became a tool, and it became not a goal in itself, not a body in itself, but it's actually extremely important. Why do we have organizations like ministry governments that talk on behalf of a country, but not on behalf of the water? And also mentally it changed something how people looked at the sea for a short term. Later it was just used again practically.
Of Dnipro.
Yeah, so maybe the Ministry of Dnipro, the voice of Dnipro, I don't know. It's but can I ask you back, who would you think should be the owner of these layers? Take the mic, please. A second.
Thank you for the question. I think it's somehow have to be a parliament. Yeah, I mean, because many voices of different, I don't know, activities, layers, and some part introducing society, someone advocate nature, and also industries and energy. It's already a list of senators you have on your presentations.
This is also how it's called in the Netherlands. It's the embassy of the North Sea, and they have they call the programs they do is the parliament of the North Sea.
Yeah.
So
everything is done.
but I think the Waddenzee organization is a much better example.
I don't even know how that exactly is, so we should have a look at that. We're going to look at the Waddenzee in the north of the Netherlands in Germany.
Чи є в нас ще запитання? Я можу допомогти з перекладом.
Thank you. First part about mobility, obviously, because you mentioned that traffic, especially cargo traffic on Dnipro decreased, mostly because it was, so to get from one part of Ukraine to another part of Ukraine by river, you need to cross Belarus, which now is obviously not working. If you say about Prezentація, and also it decreased after Chernobyl because obviously city is on the river, so it's kind of two issues why between parts of Ukraine traffic is not working, while still in Belarus something is still active on their part of Prezentація and also on north-south part of Dnipro. And actually it was agriculture who pushed for increase of traffic last years before COVID and full-scale invasion. And I read that it was, I remember that it was like 15% increase yearly of agricultural product, which is very good for decreasing congestion of traffic of heavy cars from road to river. And also you mentioned that agriculture is kind of opponent because these corporations put chemicals in water. And we had discussion in other city about this agriculture and chemicals, that in many cases it's small farmers, they make more harm per 1 kilometer because corporations know how to count money, they know which chemicals and in exactly which amount to put in the ground to make best effect, while small farmers sometimes just, I will put one more bag because last year with one bag it was good, so with 2 bags it will be better. So before invasion and before COVID, agriculture was one of, I would say, drivers of traffic. They also pushed for legislation for improvement of locks, of this one, about relation with corporations.
Yeah, I think I can repeat what both I said and what you said. So yes, of course, small agriculture is not better than a bigger one, but it doesn't mean that the big ones are doing good. There are, as I understand, there are chemicals, there are elements that you can add to the agricultural production that are not that chemical with the negative side effects for the water. So it is not only a Ukrainian problem actually, but this is all around Europe or the world. But this is absolutely something that we think we should start discussing with them and how to go to that. So for me, this is like placing it on the agenda, not ignoring it, also not saying you're stupid, you're bad. These are the kind of things that happen everywhere, and we should start to have the dialogue about it and try to find a solution. And a solution that will fit for both the bigger and the smaller corporations, because yeah, in the end, there is this natural disaster coming at us, and Dnipro can play an important role in how to solve that. They did similar things around the Danube River for a 10-year program, I think it was, how they cleaned the water step by step. So those kind of steps I could also imagine here, and here it's much more agricultural companies actually around it. But on the other hand, they are organized, at least in Ukraine, in quite an easy way. So it's not difficult to address them.
So we were actually wondering if you and your team have analyzed the topic of the microclimate of Dnipro River, and in terms of, how can I put this, global warming perhaps, because it is a really hot topic now, and I was wondering if you took it a step further and analyzed how can you transform all these things and all these lists that you were talking about earlier, how can you transform all this, taking into account the global warming problems, and if you analyze how the Dnipro River will interact in the future with our climate changes. So yeah, we were wondering if you had analysis on this topic.
The easy answer is no. We didn't approach it exactly the way you did, the way that you mentioned it. I actually also wouldn't know how to do it on this scale, because microclimate on the scale of a big river is, and then connected to global warming. But I can imagine that, of course, sub-elements that we did take. So this whole energy system, yeah, we did look at that. Looking at the places where the global warming has the biggest effects in Ukraine, the cities, yeah, we do give some advice, not that much necessary for Kremenchuk, but we do give some general advice about heat stress, about improving the natural conditions in the cities, trying to get the cars a little bit away from the city, from the river, so that the water can really cool down the cities. Those kind of elements are part of it, but we didn't calculate it. We cannot say what the real effect of global warming could be. It's a nice question to ask. Oleg, you know how to do it.
Yeah, no, I just don't want to somehow responding to quite a serious question. For example, we're now doing a study of potential, like a small recreational area in Kaniv, it is a lake or sea or I don't know, whatever. And it's quite interesting two things. There's a term, when is water clear, it's becoming very, very short. It's like just, I don't know, maybe just a June time, then water very pleasant for swimming or to be around. And second thing is it's like all these lake haven't time to freeze especially in February, which was like quite usual. 100% of winters was like a freezing glass, and now not. And during that time, it's seasonal huge flow of winds and erosion of course becoming very dramatic. It's like 10 meters every year. Yeah, go down, and this is like a full excavation of this existing land, and this is for land owners. This is becoming like quite a serious problem. It makes all this water less deep, and this is like becoming like one more problem. And this is like a movable landscape becoming like a more active change during the global warming time, but before.
Yeah, if you look at it like that, so if you look at it like from the point of view of zooming in on what's happening there in one city, that's what we hope also to do in the next phase for the Kremenchuk studies. And we have a similar small experience in Berislav, where also the land was taken away every year, like 50 centimeters or something. So you can imagine that in 10 years, 50 meters, and yeah, then if you hit the first buildings in a couple of years only. So this is the erosion part, and we are going to look at that in the Kremenchuk case, but maybe also other areas we can do it. But I understood the question a little bit more on a global scale as well, how you can improve what it could mean in terms of calculations. Interesting. I'll take it with me.
So today's presentation is something which of what I'm interested in all my life, in fact. So I think that the interest arises when, for the first time, I've seen the Dnipro River. I was born in Lviv, and we don't have river for more than 100 years already there. And what was river? So it was just small something. And what I expected to see when I came to Dnipro was something which was in the literature. So for the first at Taras Shevchenko, that the Dnipro rowers and mons, but so невикористаний, Dnipro широкий. But I was amazed that it doesn't roars and doesn't mons anymore, and there are no rapids, and there are no rapids in it. And the landscapes are not like this. And also I remember that lots of paintings of, I don't know, Luigi, the same with Taras Shevchenko, whatever, where there is lots about river, and I've seen not the same river. I've seen something completely different, and I thought that looks like, I don't know, small lakes around the, not small, big lakes, before the Black Sea, Leman. So the Toka and so on. And I thought that where is the river? So, yeah, and then I started to think, what is it? Why it is so? My dream was one day to see the Dnipro as it was in the 19th century, with the eyes probably of Taras Shevchenko or whatever. Any person who told me so much with their paintings and poetry and so on about this river. And my first thought after the attack at Kakhovska Dam was that probably I never expected that my dream can be true one day. Though it was a terrible thing, sure, but I thought that whether it's possible to see the Dnipro River as it is. And sure, we cannot do it in a year or in 5 years or in 10 years, because this landscape which we even can see at, I don't know, the Dovzhenko cinemas. One picture was with that old Cossack with bandura and a small child. That was the picture from the screening, from Dovzhenko screening. And this place doesn't exist anymore. It is under the water. So this landscape doesn't exist. It's near moment how it's called Buchaki. So there is some space. It is the space. So it is nice. Maybe probably it is nice. It will be interesting for you to know also, and for the others, that there is a documentary called "The Hollywood Over the Dnipro," or the Dreams from Atlantida. It is, I believe, a 15 years old documentary, Ukrainian documentary, which is telling us the story of one village, this Buchaki village, and that is the amazing place where lots of directors, film directors, just made lots of well-known screenings there, and was they started. So the authors of the film knew that they just started to look at Dnipro at old cinemas. And they started to point where it was and to understand. And they came to the thought that lots of the most of these films were screened there, filmed there at this village. Yeah, and that the landscape was amazing, and it is really worth to be seen. But what is more, that the landscape takes hundreds of years to be so amazing as it is, and really to see the Dnipro River as we just can see it at these cinemas before World War II or probably 50s, 60s. It will take several hundreds of years to recreate these landscapes, unfortunately. Yeah, so that is not just
It's what we do as urban planners and architects, that we correct the things that our fathers and mothers did.
But the result will be in 100 years or more, so not the same day, sure. Yeah, so I don't know what about the thoughts, but I think that we are living in really terrible times, but really very interesting times. So I never expected that something like this would be. Yeah, and also besides, one more topic about the energy, because it's part of my job today, as also the wastewater treatment and energy, and there are some small things to discuss about the presentation, but I don't think that it's needed now. But another thing that Greenpeace is working for 3 projects, done already 3 products in Ukraine. So one is this book, another is the research on wind and energy, and also some different good solutions for communities. And if to read this another books, the hydro energy, they tell a lot about it, and I think that that project could be a little bit more integrated, because if here we mentioned that it's maybe okay to have the storage of water to use it for like high hours, but in these other researches, hydro is suspected like doubtful, questionable, and not good for Ukraine. So they.
And how do they solve the peak energy issues then?
So should be. So sure, they think about wind and solar, I have a question how to do it. I would not tell from there because I don't remember. So, but there are some solutions. So it is possible without hydro, because here in Western Ukraine, except of Dnipro, we don't have hydro, and now we don't have coal, but we even didn't have so many coal power stations. So it is possible, at least. So I don't think that it's a question. And also concerning this big industry within Zaporizhzhia city, which you showed. So I was yesterday told by the people who know something about coal and steel, that they told that if Pokrovsk will be captured now, then no more steel industry in Ukraine. So I think that anyway the situation will be changed. So there is no more steel industry in Mariupol, and it will. I believe that it will never raise. No matter what will be the future status of the city, yeah, and our industry will be completely different in years. So it is changing a lot. So that's why I think that this decision making, I think that affected much by the agriculture owners. That we should rebuild the dam. I think that it is more about the loans for the agriculture, which just needed lots of money to rebuild, and they needed to give some documentation to the banks that there will be enough water, I don't know, in 10 years and so on. So I think that it was not the decision to build it as physically, but anyway, maybe to somehow to get money for agriculture and for industry during that time, because otherwise there is no future of agriculture industry. But I think that in 5 years they will get their own water from wells or whatever. So not everywhere wells are possible, sure, but or another pipelines, or they will change the horticulture there. But there are lots of things which are possible. So I think that the time will affect it better than the planners and ensure that the government's decisions. Thank you.
Чи є у вас ще питання? Добре. Okay, so thank you so much, Fulko, for this amazing presentation. Дякую вам.